Good evening, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Coming up in the next hour. India conducts anti-terror Operation Sindoor. Defence forces strike 9 terror hubs of Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed deep inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Prime Minister Narendra Modi briefs President Draupadi Murmu on Operation Sindoor against Pakistan. PM also briefs the Union Cabinet, praises Indian Armed Forces for the success of the operation. All Cabinet members express full faith in Prime Minister Modi's leadership. Home Minister Amit Shah briefs State Chief Ministers sharing borders with Pakistan and Nepal on Operation Sindoor. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri says India exercised right to respond, preempt and deter more cross-border attacks planned by Pakistan-based terrorists. 2 women officers brief media along with Foreign Secretary, elaborate on reasons for choosing 9 terror training grounds targets, say munitions picked to ensure no collateral damage. Government of India cautions against fake videos shared by pro-Pakistan handlers on Operation Sindoor, flags several fake posts, urges all to rely on official sources for authentic information. The Indian Armed Forces launched Operation Sindoor past midnight, hitting terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, from where terrorist attack against India had been planned and directed. In a press release, the Armed Forces said altogether 9 sites have been targeted. Ministry of Defence in a statement said that these actions have been focused, measured and non-escalatory in nature. The ministry informed that no Pakistani military facilities have been targeted. It added that India has demonstrated considerable restraint in selection of targets and method of execution. Further, the ministry said these steps come in the wake of barbaric Pahalgam terrorist attack in which 25 Indians and 1 Nepali citizen were murdered. They said we're living up to the commitment that those responsible for the attack will be held accountable. Prime Minister Narendra Modi met President Draupadi Murmu at Rashtrapati Bhavan this afternoon. The meeting came hours after India carried out Operation Sindoor at terror sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In a social media post, President Murmu said during the meeting with Prime Minister, briefed her about Operation Sindoor. Earlier, Prime Minister Modi chaired a meeting of Union Cabinet today. According to the sources, Prime Minister gave details of the strikes to the Cabinet colleagues. He said the Indian Army has carried out the operation as per the preparations without any mistake. All the ministers of the Union Cabinet expressed their faith in the leadership of Prime Minister Modi and said that the whole country is with him. Prime Minister Modi also praised the armed forces for their successful operation. Meanwhile, the government has convened an all-party meeting on Wednesday at 11 a.m. in the wake of Operation Sindoor. During the meeting, leaders of different political parties will be briefed by the government on the operation. Union Home Minister Amit Shah on Wednesday called on urgent meeting of the Chief Ministers, Chief Secretaries and DGPs of states having borders with Pakistan and Nepal. The meeting has been called in the wake of strikes carried out by the Indian Armed Forces on terror targets in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir as a retaliatory action against Pahalgam terror attack. And Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on Wednesday praised the armed forces for carrying out the precision strikes on terror targets in Pakistan and POK, saying the action targeted those who killed innocent people. Speaking at the inauguration of 50 infrastructure projects by Border Roads Organisation, BRO, across 6 states and 2 union territories, Singh extended gratitude to Prime Minister Modi for fully backing the armed forces who carried out the operation.
प्रधानमंत्री जी के मार्गदर्शन में हमारी भारत की सेना ने हम सभी भारतवासियों का मस्तक ऊंचा किया। कल रात हमारी भारतीय सेनाओं ने अपने अद्भुत शौर्य और पराक्रम का परिचय देते हुए एक नया इतिहास रच दिया है। साथियों, भारत की सेना ने सटीकता, सतर्कता और संवेदनशीलता के साथ कार्रवाई की है। हमने जो लक्ष्य तय किए थे उन्हें ठीक समय तय योजना के अनुसार सटीकता से उन्होंने ध्वस्त किया है और किसी भी नागरिक ठिकाने, सिविलियन पॉपुलेशन को जरा भी प्रभावित न होने देने की संवेदनशीलता भी हमारी सेना ने दिखाई है।
And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke to Qatari Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani. The minister briefed Qatari leader about Indian strike targeting terrorist infrastructure, and details on measured response to deter cross-border terrorism were provided. Minister Jaishankar also spoke with Foreign Minister of Spain, Jose Manuel Alvarez. The minister briefed his Spanish counterpart about the precision strikes, reiterated India's firm and measured response to cross-border terrorism. The minister also called on his Japanese counterpart, FM Takeshi Iwaya, appreciated the strong condemnation of the April 22nd Pahalgam terrorist attack. Leaders discussed India's action against cross-border terrorist infrastructure this morning. External Affairs Minister of India also had a joint telephonic conversation with Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of France, Jean-Noël Barrot, and Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, Johann Waitfall. Leaders appreciated their solidarity, support in the wake of the Pahalgam terrorist attack. They also discussed ensuring zero tolerance for terrorism. And India correspondent Jessica Taneja joins us for more now. Jessica, if you could take us through how is India engaging with the world in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor?
Right, Shubhendu, we have heard from a few foreign leaders, and the one you pointed out just a short while ago, especially from the French foreign minister, and I quote from that readout wherein he said, "We understand India's desire to protect itself against the scourge of terrorism." You've also heard from Israel's ambassador to India, who has said that India has the right to defend itself in situation when it's faced with a terror attack of this proportion. Apart from that, the Indian Foreign Minister, as you said, also spoke to his Japanese counterpart, and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, as we're given to understand, had spoken to all his counterparts in the P5 nations. Apart from that, there were United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, also among the countries that were briefed about the Operation Sindoor that was conducted by the Indian Armed Forces inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So far, it has been given to understand that India's position has been made clear. It has not targeted any of the civilian or economic or military facilities. It has made sure that the precision strikes were able to target only the military, the terror training outfits of both the Jaish and Lashkar that have been operating from Pakistani soil for the last many decades. And this is exactly what has been told to most of our counterparts and our allies. And just a short while ago, Shubhendu, Foreign Secretary also briefed envoys here in New Delhi, which included, of course, again, the P5 nations, but also various other nations apart from P5. In fact, we're given to understand approximately 15 or 20 of them were told they were shown the similar, videos as well as evidence of Pakistan-sponsored terrorism inside the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and its consistency when it comes to not being able to do much about the terror outfits that continue to emanate from its soil. So a part of India's course of diplomacy and also its efforts to make its allies and its counterparts understand that this is what it's been dealing with for many, many decades. And India at this point reserves the right to respond in a manner that it has done in the last few hours, as we've seen, Shubhendu.
And while Operation Sindoor targeted the terror camps across the border, India is also ramping up its civil defense infrastructure. If you could take us through the manner in which those safety drills happened today.
That's correct. Those civil defense drills for the civil defense sectors were done, just a short while ago. They were concluded, which included the air raid sirens as well as more preparatory measures. There was also a blackout planned for about 15 minutes here in New Delhi as well in the NDMC areas, just to sort of be part of the preparedness that that India would currently want to be ready for when it comes to emanating threats from Pakistan. What also is a point to understand here is that these civil defense drills are part of, in a certain way, leading us to the preparedness to the effect where we know that these civil defense districts, as they're given to understand, are different from normal administrative districts, because these civil defense districts are often housing, our cantonment areas, our refineries, they have important power plants and nuclear, facilities as well. So, their preparedness and all kinds of possible scenarios. Imagine if there is, an air attack or any of that in the possibility or eventuality. What we're given to understand from our officials who have been conducting these drills is that India is more than prepared if anything were to escalate from Pakistan's side to that effect. So these mock drills, in essence, which India has been prepared for for a very long time, this was just a usual routine, so to say, nothing which would reflect the fact that there is an imminent threat at this point, but just on the part of preparedness is where India stands at this point, and that is why these civil defense drills in these districts were carried out.
Right, Jessica, thank you for those updates. And briefing media on Operation Sindoor, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said India has exercised its right to respond, preempt and deter most cross-border attacks following the Pahalgam terror attack. He noted investigations into the Pahalgam terror attack have brought out the communication notes of terrorists in and to Pakistan.
Investigations into the Pahalgam terror attack have brought out the communication notes of terrorists in and to Pakistan. The claims made by the Resistance Front and their reposting by known social media handles of the Lashkar-e-Taiba speak for themselves. Identification of the attackers based on eyewitness accounts as well as other information available to law enforcement agencies has also progressed. Our intelligence has developed an accurate picture of the planners and backers of this team. The features of this attack also tie in with Pakistan's long track record of perpetrating cross-border terrorism in India, which is well documented and beyond question. Pakistan also has a well-deserved reputation as a haven for terrorists from around the world, with internationally proscribed terrorists enjoying impunity there. In addition, Pakistan has been known to willfully mislead the world and international forums, such as the Financial Action Task Force, on this issue.
And the Foreign Secretary also said it was deemed essential that perpetrators of the attack were brought to justice.
Essential that the perpetrators and planners of the 22nd April attack be brought to justice. Despite a fortnight having passed since the attacks, there has been no demonstrable step from Pakistan to take action against the terrorist infrastructure on its territory or on territory under its control. Instead, all it has indulged in are denials and allegations. Our intelligence monitoring of Pakistan-based terrorist modules indicated that further attacks against India were impending. There was thus a compulsion both to deter and to preempt.
And speaking on the attack in Pahalgam on April 22nd, he said Pakistani and Pakistan-trained terrorists associated with Lashkar-e-Taiba launched a barbaric attack on the tourists.
Earlier this morning, as you would be aware, India exercised its right to respond and preempt as well as deter more such cross-border attacks. These actions were measured, non-escalatory, proportionate, and responsible. They focused on dismantling the terrorist infrastructure and disabling terrorists likely to be sent across to India.
The Foreign Secretary noted that the attack was deliberate to undermine normalcy in Jammu and Kashmir, adding that family members were deliberately traumatized and were threatened to convey the message of that barbarism.
Were deliberately traumatized through the manner of the killing, accompanied by the exhortation that they should take back the message. The attack was clearly driven by the objective of undermining the normalcy returning to Jammu and Kashmir. In particular, it was designed to impact the mainstay of the economy, tourism, with a record 23 million tourists visiting the valley last year. The calculation, presumably, was that harming growth and development in the Union territory would help keep it backward and create fertile ground for continued cross-border terrorism from Pakistan.
And Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said India had given inputs about the TRF in half-yearly report to the monitoring team of UN 1267 Sanctions Committee in May and November last year, bringing out its role as a cover for Pakistan-based terrorist group.
Notable that India had given inputs about the TRF in the half-yearly report to the monitoring team of the UN's 1267 Sanctions Committee in May and November 2024, bringing out its role as a cover for Pakistan-based terrorist groups. Earlier too, in December 2023, India had informed the monitoring team about Lashkar and Jaish-e-Mohammed operating through small terror groups such as the TRF. Pakistan's pressure to remove references to TRF in the April 25 UN Security Council press statement is notable in this regard.
And speaking on India's action on terrorist camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, India's Wing Commander Vyomika Singh said the Operation Sindoor was launched to deliver justice to the victims of Pahalgam terror attack and their families. The Wing Commander added that 9 terrorist camps were targeted and successfully destroyed.
Camps were targeted and successfully destroyed. Over the last 3 decades, Pakistan has systematically built terror infrastructure. It is a complex web of recruitment and indoctrination centers, training areas for initial and refresher courses, and launch pads for handlers. These camps are located both in Pakistan as well as Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir areas. Some of the well-known training camps are located, as you can see on the screen. They are distributed from Savai Nala in the north, counting to approximately 21, ending at Bhavalpur to the south.
The Wing Commander asserted that Operation Sindoor was carried out with due diligence using niche technology, weapons, careful selection of warheads.
Of these targets for Operation Sindoor was based on credible intelligence inputs and role of these facilities in perpetrating the terror activities. The locations were so selected to avoid damage to civilian infrastructures and loss of any civilian lives. This was done with due diligence. A niche technology weapons with careful selection of warheads was ensured so that there will be no collateral damage. The point of impact in each of the target was a specific building or a group of buildings. All the targets were neutralized with clinical efficiency, and the results reiterate the professionalism of the Indian Armed Forces in the planning and execution of their operations. No military establishments were targeted. India has demonstrated considerable restraint in its response. However, it must be said that the Indian Armed Forces are fully prepared to respond to Pakistani misadventures, if any, that will escalate the situation.
We now continue our conversation on Operation Sindoor. We are joined by our guest, Professor Sriram Cholia, Foreign Affairs expert. Also joining me in the studio is my colleague Amit Mukherjee, Senior Correspondent with DD India, looks after strategic affairs. Good evening and welcome, both of you. Professor Cholia, we've been talking about Operation Sindoor since early morning today. What would you say India achieved with this operation?
Well, this is the deepest strikes we have ever done in Pakistani territory since the 1971 war. So that's 54 years. We have actually crossed all the previous benchmarks we set in counterterrorism. So this is a big deal. Right. And I think it's being studied not only in the region but worldwide. Wherever this jihadi menace is, people have been looking for solutions, and commensurate and proportionate means by which they can tackle this menace. And clearly, we are setting a benchmark in global counterterrorism efforts. So I would say this is a milestone in India's evolution as an assertive state, India's strategic culture, which has become much more, much less defensive and much more assertive under Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the last 11 years. And this is proof that we are willing to take risks. And, in these kind of, in game theory, we call this game of chicken, where two, vehicles are heading towards a collision. And the question is who will swerve first and who will blink first. And what India is saying is that we are not going to blink, and we are willing to risk escalation if you dare to. That's the message we are giving to Pakistan. So we are stronger. We are a giant economy compared to them. We've got much more conventionally superior military. And if they use dirty tricks and commit crimes against humanity like they did in Pahalgam, we reserve the right to use all our might to teach a lesson. So that's what I think has happened this time. And we are ready. We've also indicated clearly that if they think that this is an escalatory spiral and they will continue to retaliate, our counter response to their response will be even harsher. So what we are trying to do is impose a kind of deterrence on them through calculated military moves. And we'll, of course, know their ideological, hardline ideology is not going to vanish overnight because of this. They will try to regroup. They're already claiming that the Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba will take revenge on India for what they are calling our atrocities. So, we've got to be continuously prepared for this in the long run. But what we have shown is that India today, under Narendra Modi, is not going to sit back and take it lying down. I think that's the biggest message, because their propaganda, their ideology claims that Indians/Hindus are weak and are cowards. But what we showed is through our bravery that we are willing to take them on. I think that's a big message to terrorists, because terrorists often are brainwashed into thinking that they have the advantage because they have the jazba, as they call it in Pakistan, that they have the, the spirit to fight holy war. What we are saying is we will also fight back. And in fact, when we fight back, the cost is going to be very heavy on you. So I think a very big message has been sent. And for years, we're going to study Operation Sindoor as a landmark in the global history of counterterrorism.
Right. Professor Cholia, you said that the world is watching. I thought that the press conference that happened, led by the Foreign Secretary and the lady officers, was meaningful in the manner in which it presented evidence-based description of all that had happened under Operation Sindoor, a broad insight into it. What is the message for the world from India?
It is that we are a responsible player even when we are taking risks, that we act responsibly and we don't, massacre civilians the way this terrorist state has been doing for so long, and it is that we have, a state that acts with a sense. In fact, Rajnath Singh ji, our defense minister, said that we acted with sensitivity. He used the word samvedansheel, in Hindi, that even when we are taking a hard military response, we act with, great deal of caution. So I think the message to international community is that, we are not irresponsible, we are not escalating, and we are simply bringing culprits and terrorists and criminals to justice. So I think what we are doing is, treading this carefully and not allowing this to reach a point where Pakistan can, use its, nuclear threats and all these things and cry out to the world to stop Indian aggression as they would like to, as they see it. Because if we were to use even harsher methods or go directly against the Pakistan military itself, then they could claim that, this is all-out war and, we have to use nuclear weapons. So what we are doing is we are ruling out those things through these unconventional methods. If they are unconventional through terrorism, our, armed forces are also using unconventional means in counter-terrorism. I think that's the message we are conveying to the international community. Don't be alarmed or overly alarmed by what we have done. And yes, if there ought to be restraint, then Pakistan has to exercise restraint right now. And I think that is our message, because what we are saying is if Pakistan does not sit back, or does not sit down and let this crisis pass now, then we reserve the right to retaliate even further. So I think international community tends to be a little bit neutral on these questions. They always say both sides should exercise restraint,
Right.
and both sides should reach a political settlement or through enter dialogue or talks. But what we are saying is that first we bring people to justice, and then we are putting the ball in your court to calm down and to sit back. So I think it's a kind of a big power attitude we are showing this time. We are far ahead of Pakistan in all the indices, economic, military, and even political stability. So we are showing that we are a superior side through this, and we are telling the world, despite being superior, we are being magnanimous.
We will also talk about the manner in which India is engaging with the world aftermath of Operation Sindoor, Professor Cholia. But Amit, if I can come to you, how challenging is it, if you could give us a perspective, it is to carry out an operation like Operation Sindoor, and yet how necessary?
Well, Shubhendu, if you look at the entire operation, it was a very, very complex operation. If you look at the terrain, because Sawai Nala is right on, it's a very mountainous region in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and Bhawalpur, which is down south, these are the two endpoints, between which the operations were actually carried out. Now, Bhawalpur is a very densely populated area. It's a lot of civilians around. And, Sawai Nala is a place, it's a mountainous region, very complicated. So what is commendable is the kind of planning that has gone into the entire operation, because the kind of intels which were gathered, because the very fact that there were not collateral damages, it was, the operation was targeted at breaking the backbone of terror, which the Indian forces, the joint operation, the well-coordinated operation by the Indian Air Force, Navy, as well as the Indian Army, which is carried out. The very fact that there were no collateral damage, it talks volumes about the operation. It was only targeted to destroy the terror hubs which has been operating. And India again took a very, very measured sort of a stance, because this thing has happened, this particular operation has happened almost after 14 days. India has been telling Pakistan to act on the terror. They have been saying that those terrorists had come from cross-border from the side of Pakistan, killed innocent people, went back. So Pakistan they sat pretty doing nothing about it. So, and in the meantime, India planned every logistic as far as this operation was concerned, mobilized the international community. They got talking to almost every international partner which India has been having, whether it's in terms of trade or other bilateral relations. They engaged everybody. They created a narrative. Of course, the international community was talking about restraint, de-escalation of the situation, which was kind of coming to a boiling point. But again, at the same time, all the international community, including the UN, maintained that the perpetrators of this heinous crime should be brought to justice. So that was a very, very clear message to some extent, where India succeeded in also kind of, playing its diplomatic cards, engaging the international community. And today we saw the reactions. In fact, New York Times, it had to change its tone from calling them militants, the perpetrators of 22nd April. They said that India acted against terrorists today. Although they had faced flack, New York Times, they had faced flack from the House Committee, the US House Committee, for calling those perpetrators as, militants, because it was a clear act of terror. So we see, it was a very complicated operation which was conducted. It was very precise in nature, the selection of weapons, from kind of executing it from, from locations where it actually was, and no collateral damage. That
speaks volumes about the kind of force
absolutely.
that the Indian Army represents, Amit.
Yes, absolutely. The kind of precision that was used, the capabilities, the choice of weapons. In fact, those weapons were low-flying weapons. They were stealth in nature, not visible to the radar, and it had actually taken, who the targets absolutely unawares. So it speaks volumes of the capability of today's capability of defense forces and the kind of coordinated operations which the Indian defense forces can conduct. It was a midnight operation which took place just between 1:05 to 1:30 in middle night of the night, 25 minutes operation, and the 9 targets was hit precisely, no collateral damage. Of course, those who were intended to be hit were actually targeted, and all the assets and personnel who were used, who were engaged in this operation, they came back and were accounted for. So
Okay,
it's a absolutely seamless operation which was conducted.
Right. Professor Cholia, the point that we were talking about India's engagement with the world over the issue of terrorism, global terrorism, cross-border terrorism, does Operation Sindoor have the potential to nudge, as it were, the international community to rethink its stand on the issue of terrorism? Foreign Secretary in his press briefing does sort of talk about, for decades, India suffered this challenge of cross-border terrorism. Also speaks about the manner in which Pakistan very cleverly fools around with adding new faces to the old terror groups. So in all of this, what kind of an impact do you think this operation could have in the larger world outside and their perspective on terrorism?
I think generally, people know the fact that Pakistan is an epicenter and has been a hotbed for jihadist extremists for a long time. Around the world, it was known. But people used to tiptoe around it because the general mindset of the international community was that to see this whole, conflict as part of a territorial dispute between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. That's how they generally view it, even now. So what we have tried to do is to actually keep this so-called territorial dispute matter aside and highlight the terrorism as the main problem, and that's not the territorial dispute. So I think to that extent we have tried to convince a lot of them. Not everybody has bought it, but in general there is greater sympathy or empathy for India because we are also strengthening our relationships with a lot of key countries through strategic partnerships. So they are getting a lot more from India. India is a big power here, relatively speaking. We are the fourth largest economy. We've just overtaken Japan. And, we are a big opportunity for the international community. So even if whatever be the merits or demerits of this whole so-called the Kashmir dispute and the Pakistan's claims and all these, they are willing to look at the Indian viewpoint more favorably now because we give them so many other benefits in terms of economic, market access, in terms of, strategic cooperation, and so on and so forth. So I think many of them are open to understanding the Indian viewpoint, and nobody really questions us when we take action. All they say is, we don't want it to escalate. So I think to that extent, we've got a green signal for these limited and proportionate type of counterterrorism actions from the international community. We don't have a green signal for, all-out assault or war. And I don't think we even would want it because, there's nuclear weapons on the other side also. So short of that, I think we have more or less found, if not a favorable, then at least a neutral environment which is not blocking us. In earlier eras, in the pre-Modi period, what used to happen was that the previous government, especially Manmohan Singh's time, they used to fear what will the international community say if we take action. They used to be afraid of the so-called wrath of the international community, or even that global investors will abandon India. I think we are now so confident that we don't worry about this.
Would you then say that this is almost like a new normal? We've had the 2016 surgical strike, 2019 Balakot. Of course, the context were different. The attack was then on the security forces. This time it was civilians. And now we see Operation Sindoor. So it's like a new normal that India would respond if it is nudged through the means of terrorism.
Yeah, and if it is provoked, see, it's all about, the extent of the damage. I mean, if you go back to 2008, Mumbai attacks were horrific, right? But our response was shameful at the time under Dr. Manmohan Singh. But now, what we are doing is, it's more heroic, it's more valorous to the extent that what we are saying is, like I said, don't test our bravery, and the capabilities of our armed forces. We have both the capability and the intent to pay you back and in multiple fold. So I think I would say it's a new normal, but a progressive new normal where every time they provoke us, we go to the next level. So what we're doing is we're stretching. We created a spectrum of responses, kinetic responses, from Manmohan Singh style no action and India is soft state to maybe like an Israel style, all out assault and being a hard state. India is moving in the direction of being an assertive state. We cannot be like Israel because Israel does not face nuclear armed adversaries except maybe Iran. So what we are doing is, given our structural constraints in this neighborhood where we have two nuclear armed states that are our primary adversaries, China and Pakistan, we are using our means to try and deter these adversaries, especially Pakistan, which is more brazen because of its jihadist mentality, compared to China, which uses more conventional types of pressure on us for territory. So I think what we are doing now is we are setting progressively, we are also upping the ante in terms of the counter-terrorism response. And we are saying that ultimately, because we are superior player, we have control over the escalatory ladder. We will choose when to stop this.
Do you see a possibility of an escalation?
That gives you a kind of a little bit of a command over the situation. It doesn't mean that they will not retaliate, or that we will not face terror attacks again. What it means is that we are raising the cost until hopefully some rationality will prevail on the other side, and they will say, we are just unable to bear this new India. This new India is so ferocious and so unafraid that we better not provoke them in the future. At least that is what we would want to bring in the form of deterrence. It remains to be seen, but definitely our intent is quite clear. And if any rational, calculation still prevails in the Pakistan military, they will realize that this game that they've been playing for many decades is going to be too costly for them. So we will hope that medium to long term, we will not have such incidents like Pahalgam. But until then, we are going to progressively up the ante.
But for now, Professor Cholia, do you see a possibility of escalation?
Look, it's an irrational state. It's, as we know, the military is participating in the funerals of all the terrorists who have been killed by Indian armed strikes. They're openly participating and doing prayers for all dreaded terrorists. So they are quite brazen about this, and they think that this is part of their holy war or their national identity as an Islamic Republic of Pakistan. For them, it's a theocratic religious identity at stake, and as their army chief has said recently, we cannot coexist with Hindus. That's how they think. They're very, very narrow and fundamentalist, the Pakistani military. So they have to save face, and they will claim, that they could also wreak havoc in India. So we have to be alert, and it may not necessarily be through, they don't have the capabilities that we have with our advanced fighter jets and precision guided munitions, but they will ask for Chinese assistance to beef up and to try and do something in the future. And of course, they always have the old so-called terror proxies method. So they will try to continue to do Pahalgam type of incidents to show that if you kill Masood Azhar's entire family and you wipe out our top terrorists, we can also, do damage to you. So, ultimately rationality should prevail, but they have to save face, and they have to also give so-called embolden their, jihadi constituency that not all is lost. Don't fear India. They want to give assurance to them that we don't fear India. So they will try and do something, but I think we've got it covered, and we've got the means to be able to impose our will on them successively as we up the ante.
Okay, Amit, given that Operation Sindoor is a powerful response, but still it may not be a sort of permanent solution to the menace of terrorism, what kind of preparedness, in the context of what we were talking about, what kind of preparedness would you see India would need to exercise on multiple fronts and formats?
Well, Shubhendu, this is not the first time the April 22nd incident has happened. In fact, one of the targets, Bhawalpur target, that is the hub of Jaish-e-Mohammed, and Azhar Masood, who's the guy who was involved in the IC-814 hijack in 1999. I mean, he still exists. That the very fact that Pakistan has been shielding these kind of, international terrorists are, a testament of the fact that Pakistan still today continues to be a terror hub. They have been harboring numerous terrorists out there. And the main job of a terrorist is to wreak havoc, because that is the only thing they are capable of doing. So as long as those people continue to exist in a state like Pakistan, India would definitely will have to keep its guards up. And of course, the preparedness, I would say, India took a long time. Despite the fact that India has been asking for a credible response from Pakistan, all they did was, they kept on, uttering those rhetorics. They kept on flexing those muscles by testing missiles, leveling allegations against India. And so, it's a rogue state. Let us understand that. So, and it will continue.
And therefore, Amit, my question was about how prepared can India be in its defense. And I want to add the mock drills that took place, I think they become important in this context to prepare the people for any eventuality.
See, Shubhendu, there are two aspects to it. Mock drills are meant for civilians, to brace up for the situation. As far as, responding to the adversaries are concerned, we have our line of control, our military personnel who are there, who just sit there day in and out, guarding our borders. They are, of course, well prepared. The kind of weapons and ammunitions which India has in today's, at this date, it's absolutely, those are very tactical, capable of, handling all kinds of situations. And again, coming back to what Mr. Chaulia was saying, the kind of capabilities which India has today, it's no match compared to Pakistan. They are way behind us. In fact, if you look at their economic situation also, it's not very good. They are down, whether it's in terms of foreign reserves, whether it's in terms of they are deep down in debts. They don't really have money to even continue buying food for the people for the next 2-3 months. That is the kind of state Pakistan is in right now. So, but the fact again still remains that, it's a terror hub. There are numerous terrorists out there. Again, they will continue, but their abilities are limited. And of course, India is much more well prepared, and of course, the Indian defence, the three wings of defence, they have their plans in place to counter any kind of rogue activity, which of course might come in the near future from the Pakistan side.
Okay, and Professor Chaulia, finally, in the aftermath of the terror attack in Pahalgam, April 22nd, Operation Sindoor was not the first response. There have been several other steps taken by India, whether we talk about the diplomatic strikes or the putting in abeyance the Indus Water Treaty. And now Operation Sindoor has also happened in its entirety. Then how do you see the response by India against the terror attack in Pahalgam? And has it been able to, should I say, avenge the killings that had happened in Pahalgam? Has it been able to do more than that?
I think we have done more than just avenge. It's a multi-pronged pressure strategy, maximum pressure strategy that we have applied. Indus waters, it's a historic step to, stop them. And also, we are using all our levers to make sure IMF and other, international lending agencies, again, do not commit the error of giving loans to Pakistan, which it can then use to for terror activities. And I think international community, like we said, has been apprised of the nature of the problem that is festering in that country. So on all those counts, non-kinetic measures we have done. We are also in the information space. We are trying to put our narrative out there on the world stage, so people understand that this monster of jihad must be tackled by everybody without double standards. So there are a lot of pressure tactics we have used this time. And the only thing is, once the crisis passes, slowly people tend to move on and become a little bit laid back. So my view is that, we have to be eternally vigilant and sustain the pressure over a longer period. It will require a kind of national will. And what these drills and all these are part of that, mustering the national will to stand up at a time of national security crisis. And I think the society is being mobilized better. And I think that is the ultimate strength of India. Look at the officers we had who made the press conference. We had, women up front. We had women from different religious backgrounds. We are showing that India is much bigger than Pakistan on all these counts. We are a unified society where all groups live in relative harmony. And we are an example to the world, and that's our strength. So on all these counts, I think we are showing Pakistan to be the complete, obverse of India, a narrow fundamentalist theocracy that is failing and is also become a troublemaker for the entire region. So to that count, I think we have done more than just take revenge, but the narrative and the information war will continue, and we should also use more financial levers going forward through multilateral bodies to sustain the pressure in the long run, because like we just mentioned, they're already broke, but how do you break the back of a broke country? It is through sustaining this kind of pressure in the medium to long term. So hopefully I hope that in 5 years we will not ever again have to worry or bother about this troublemaker, and we can go ahead with our competition with China. We can go ahead with being, on par with the United States and becoming a great power. But until we solve this problem, this will always remain an obstacle in our path, and that's what the Chinese also want. So we have to remove this obstacle through this sustained maximum pressure campaign over medium to long terms.
On that note, Professor Sriram Cholia, thank you very much for joining us in the program and sharing your perspective. Thank you also to Amit for joining us in the studio with those inputs. Soon after the focus strikes on terrorist and terrorist infrastructure at 9 sites in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir on Wednesday as part of Operation Sindoor, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval spoke with NSAs of several countries, including United States NSA, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, UK NSA Jonathan Powell, Saudi Arabia NSA Musaid Al-Eban, UAE NSA Sheikh Tahnoon, Secretary General of NSC of UAE Ali Al-Shamsi, and NSA of Japan Mastaka Okano. Contact was also established with Russian NSA Sergei Shoigu, member of Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the PRC Wang Yi, and diplomatic advisor to the French President Emmanuel Bon. NSA briefed his counterparts on actions taken and method of execution, which were measured, non-escalatory and restrained. He emphasized that India had no intent to escalate but was well prepared to retaliate resolutely should Pakistan decide to escalate. India's Foreign Secretary Bikram Misri briefed ambassadors of permanent members of UN Security Council about India's operation against terror camps in Pakistan and POK. The Indian Armed Forces launched Operation Sindoor past midnight, hitting terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, from where terrorist attacks against India have been planned and directed. Now, just a word of caution to all our viewers. Vested interests are trying to spread fake news. People should not believe misinformation being spread and only trust official channels and sources. Soon after the news of Operation Sindoor broke out, fake videos were shared by several pro-Pakistan handles, starting circulating on social media. Refuting the claims, Ministry of Defence India has clarified it is being falsely claimed about strikes on Indian security establishments. The video shared is an old one, not from India. The video is from the screenshot that you see on your screen is from a sectarian clashes that took place in the year 2024, last year, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan. Further, next, an old image showing a crashed aircraft is being recirculated by pro-Pakistan handles in various forms in the current context of Operation Sindoor. Also, the image is from an earlier incident involving an Indian Air Force MiG-29 fighter jet that crashed in Rajasthan in September 2024. Besides the image, the next one is from an earlier incident involving an Indian Air Force MiG-21 fighter jet that crashed in Moga district in Punjab in the year 2021. The government has thus urged people to rely only on official sources for information, Government of India sources for authentic updates. Meanwhile, a wave of relief and pride has swept the nation as the news of Operation Sindoor unfolded. Many Indians expressed satisfaction and a sense of security, commending the precision and effectiveness of the action while hoping for lasting peace. There's a feeling that a strong message has been delivered.
जो किया है वो अच्छा किया है, वी आर प्राउड. आज हो गया है, उसके वजह से थोड़ा रिलैक्स भी अभी हो गए कि कुछ होएगा नहीं. वी आर नॉट सो फ्राइटन.
पहलगाम जैसी वारदातें आगे ना हो, ये जो मिलिटेंट जो ट्रेनिंग सेंटर बने हो, इनको ख़त्म कर देना चाहिए. पाकिस्तान को भी एक अकल आए और पाकिस्तान पे भी पूरा दबाव बना के रखना चाहिए कि ऐसी हरकत ना करे कि निर्दोष लोगों की हत्या ना करवाए.
जो अभी सरकार किया बहुत अच्छा किया. पाकिस्तान को एक बार सबक देना बहुत ज़रूरी था.
पाकिस्तान द्वारा जो पहलगाम में हमारे निहत्थे यात्रियों पर हमला करके उनको शहीद किया गया था, उसके लिए हम काफ़ी दिनों से इस चीज़ का इंतज़ार कर रहे थे. जो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी द्वारा रात को जो फैसला लिया गया, हम उसका स्वागत करते हैं.
आज पूरे देश के अंदर खुशी है. रात से 2 बजे से लोग एक दूसरे को फोन करके बधाइयां दे रहे हैं कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर घुसकर हमारी एयरफोर्स ने जो है वो कई आतंकवादियों को मार गिराया है और उनके ठिकानों को ध्वस्त किया है।
सच स्ट्राइक मुझे बहुत ज़रूरी था और ये पाकिस्तान की जो यहाँ पहलगाम का जो बदला लिया है इसके लिए मैं बहुत ही धन्यवाद करता हूँ प्रधानमंत्री का। और ऐसा अगर दोबारा ये पाकिस्तान अगर ऐसी बात नहीं करे इसको बिल्कुल ही जड़ से ख़त्म कर देना चाहिए। जो पहलगाम में जो लोग घूमने गए थे उन पे जो जुल्म किया गया हमें बड़ा दुख हुआ। तो उसके बाद जो हमारे फौजियों ने सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक की है हम इस पे खुश हैं क्योंकि उनको जवाब मिलना चाहिए। बार बार उन्होंने हमारे पड़ोसी मुल्क ने हमारे लोगों को परेशान किया। ये जो एयर स्ट्राइक हुई है इसके लिए हम बहुत खुश हैं। जो हमारे नेता लोगों के साथ और मासूम लोगों के साथ जो पहलगाम में जो हादसा हुआ उसके लिए हम कहते हैं कि अभी तो कुछ भी नहीं जवाब दिया। हम तो चाहते हैं कि इतना मुंह तोड़ जवाब देना चाहिए कि दुश्मन हमेशा के लिए याद रखे।
26 जो टूरिस्ट थे हमारे पहलगाम में जिनको गोलियों से धर्म पूछ कर मारा गया, 15 दिन के अंदर अंदर पाकिस्तान को मुंह तोड़ का जवाब दिया गया है भारतीय सेना ने। और पाकिस्तान को अभी अकल आनी चाहिए।
India launched strikes against Pakistan in response to a deadly attack on tourists in Kashmir last month. While Indian leaders hailed the strong response from the armed forces, global leaders have called for dialogue to de-escalate the situation and ensure regional stability.
Reactions from across the world and India started pouring in on the midnight launch of the Operation Sindoor on the terrorist infrastructure in both Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir on Wednesday. Israel has extended its support to New Delhi, defending its right to self-defense. Global leaders, including US President Donald Trump and United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, have expressed concern and urged restraint. Japan has also condemned the initial terrorist attack and called for dialogue to de-escalate the situation and ensure regional stability. Panama, a non-permanent UNSC member, has also issued a statement saying it stands in solidarity with India in this tragic loss and in the ongoing fight against terrorism. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval shortly after India carried out missile strike on terror targets in Pakistan. Reacting to Operation Sindoor, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said, "The world must show zero tolerance for terrorism." India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and India's Home Minister Amit Shah also echoed similar sentiments. India's main opposition leader Rahul Gandhi has hailed Operation Sindoor. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge and Indian politician Asauddin Owaisi lauded India's strike against POK under Operation Sindoor. Senior opposition leader and General Secretary of All India Congress Committee Jairam Ramesh reaffirmed the Congress party's unwavering support for India's response to cross-border terrorism. Relatives of victims and survivors of Pahalgam attack continue to applaud India's strike on Pakistan. Many describe the operation as absolutely necessary to send a clear message against terrorism.
I think government has done a detailed study before coming into this conclusion of attacking these terror outfits, and we completely support the government decision.
बहुत धन्यवाद करती हूँ, उनसे बहुत थैंक यू कहती हूँ कि उन्होंने मेरे पति की मौत का बदला लिया है।
जो उन्होंने मोदी साहब ने बदला लिया है, सेना के जवानों को यही मैसेज देना चाहती हूँ कि आगे बढ़ते रहो।
In cities and towns nationwide, locals expressed pride in the armed forces and lauded the government's action against terror.
We should teach them a very great lesson. This time we should not leave them. They should learn the lesson for their lifetime.
The retaliation was needed, I think. I think justice has been served.
I think it's much needed and it's very appropriate. Pakistan is a country that practices cross-border terrorism as an instrument of its state policy.
Slogans of Bharat Mata Ki Jai and Vande Mataram were raised as people across India celebrated Operation Sindoor and hailed the armed forces. Bureau Report, DD India.
That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.